So again, welcome all, and nice to gather going into Gita. So this is the auspicious Navaratri time, the 9 days, 9 nights of celebrating the transcending of the demoniac qualities and the awakening of the divine, which is what this chapter is about. So we are in the 16th chapter of Gita, which is getting towards the end. So far, as we know, Krishna has spoken about the entire expanse of self-knowledge. He speaks of self-inquiry, which is Sankhya, and being free of the sense of doership, which is Karma Yoga, and thereby recognizing the falsity of an individual self and seeing only the one universal presence everywhere, every moment. And all of that was culminated in the 15th chapter, which is called the Purushottam Yoga, which is a very beautiful chapter we saw, where Purushottama is the supreme being, the one essence that pervades everything, everywhere, which is beyond the limitations of whether it's the body or mind or any such limitation. Now, when we come to the 16th chapter, now Krishna speaks of what is the divine and demoniac qualities. So having gone through all of this, what does it mean to speak of this? Obviously, when we look into divine and demoniac qualities, these are clearly both present within every human. So we have all these symbolisms of devas and asuras, but in reality it points to the presence of the divine and the demoniac within every human entity, human being. So one way to look at it, which may be a very simple way to recognize this, is the difference between being in order and being in disorder. So when we are in order, within and without, there is a certain way in which life flows with ease. And when there is disorder, then life flows differently. So if we look at it in this way, we can see first of all the disorder that's present everywhere. And that disorder is what we are referring to as demoniac qualities. So we see this individually, we see this in relations, we see this between nations, we see disorder everywhere. We see the manifestation of disorder that's there in all the realms of our lives. And that disorder is nothing but a result of inner and outer division. So when we don't put things in the right place, there is disorder. Right? This is a very simple thing. Outwardly, we can see this clearly. For example, we have this nice house, everything is in the right place, then there is order. If things are just everywhere and it's just a mess, then there is disorder. But while we focus on keeping things in the right place, in order outside, we somehow never look at the importance of keeping things in order within. And that order within is what is the essence of awakening the divine, and the disorder is the ignorance of the demoniac qualities. So what is this disorder, or what is this demoniac qualities we are referring to? outwardly we see that there is all kinds of conflict that happens, right, in society, whether it's between two people or between two nations or two religions, between man and nature, between man and other species. At all these various levels, there is disorder. And this disorder comes because of various factors such as comparison, such as greed, envy, anger, all these qualities, right? So when we see that we are caught in any of this, there is no order within. We can feel the breath is not even, the energy is not flowing correctly. We are caught in this sense of being not in harmony, right? That is the most important thing, and everyone is aware of it. When we are not in harmony, it's very clear. And this can happen at all levels. One of the important things to recognize is that this disharmony is pervasive at all levels. So when we look at a conflict that happens inside a house or a conflict that happens internationally, the root of it is the same, which is that there is an identification with a certain idea or a certain image or a certain concept which is held tightly as the sense of me. And then there is the similar judgment or image making of others as well. We look at others through a certain image and we project this image. So if you look at it individually, it's very easy to see how, first, when we look at a glimpse of how this is not the case for a child, let's say, if we take a small child that's playing, we see that the child is always in the moment. There can be two children are playing, there can be a fight, and then they immediately, the next moment, it's as if nothing happened, and they are just going about, and there is a total presence to this moment. But that presence is absent when there is the building of story within our head as the sense of me. So when, for example, there is a argument, we immediately feel personally offended because of the argument and say that I was insulted by this, how dare he speak like that, and why is he speaking like that? Or if, on the other hand, if someone flatters me, then I'm very elated by it, and then I am again not in balance because I feel that now I'm very attached to this person or to this an event that went well. So we see that we are not in balance when we are caught in this duality of insult and flattery, things going well and not well. All of this is rooted in the identification with our mental image that we have built as the sense of self, as the sense of me. We are always having a sense of who I am, which is simply a psychological memory we have built over time. So if you really look at the physical organism, again, the physical organism doesn't ever have any sense of time in it. So if you look at the heart or the liver or the lungs, they are just always now. They are just functioning as they are. The whole body, in fact, is not a problem. But what we do is, on top of it, through the activity of mind, we project a sense of self. And we think that this is my identity. We create an identity based on accumulating memories and building a sense of self. This is something we can look into right now. When we look into our essence of who we are, we will see that there is always a sense of identity that is there, that is coming forth as the answer to the question of who I am. Whether that identity is associated with a relationship or with a job function, or whether with a nationality, or whether with a religion, any of that. And so that identity becomes the determining factor in our action. So when that identity is insulted, we feel low. When that identity is boosted, we feel high. This is the common experience of all of us. And we do not see that in a child, for example, right? It's very, like, you go and praise a child, the child doesn't care about it. You go and insult or chastise a child, the next moment they are laughing and they are playing. So this structure of the me that the mind produces inevitably in every human being, regardless of gender, race, color, whatever, religion, everywhere we go, we see the common factor that there is always an identification with a sense of self. And the sense of self, which is considered to be me, is the primary factor that is the determining factor for all our actions. And that factor is the factor that brings forth disorder. So when we speak of order and disorder, the disorder comes forth when there is identification with a fiction that is developed by the mind, which is bringing forth a sense of self. And because the sense of self is brought forth from the past through memory, we are not fully available to this moment, but we are processing this moment through the filter of that memory of the past. So for example, very simple example, when I listen to someone, if I actually just listen, that is to say, if the apparatus of listening, the language, the meaning, all of that is there, then there is really just listening. But on the other hand, if I listen from the standpoint of an image that I have, which is a function of all the memories I have psychologically built as to what is right, what is wrong, whether I like that person who's speaking, whether I dislike him, whether I like this theory or not like this theory, whether it is conforming to my religion or not. We have so many factors that are playing in our head, which are all part of this sense of the self that we have created. And that comes forth, and that's what's listening. Therefore, we are actually not listening. There is only a filter that's listening. And that filter, it's like not seeing directly, but wearing a tainted glasses and seeing. So what we see is always colored because the eyes are not seeing directly, but through a tinted glasses. In the same way, we are actually listening through the lens of this listener, who is the image that is built from the past. And that image that is built from the past is what we call the psychological self we have built. So one of the things, as we mentioned, is order means putting things in the right place, right? And one of the important aspects of that is putting thought in its right place. So we have this faculty of thinking, which is very unique to humans, which includes language, which includes understanding and all of that. And it has a very beautiful place in it because it is thought that is able to bring forth technology, bring forth understanding of the material universe, bring forth, therefore, the necessary luxuries which are different for different people, but whether it's an automobile or whether it's a house or whether it's whatever it is, all of this is requiring thought. So we use thought to understand something. But the same mechanism of thought, when it is employed in the psychological domain becomes the corrupting factor. When I'm using thought to judge a person, to categorize them as to whether I like them or don't like them, to judge myself, to say that I am very great because this thing was done by me, or I'm very bad because this thing was not done by me, all the self-judging voices, all the judgment of others, this voice in the head is also thought. So the same thought, which is very essential for making a good recipe or writing a good piece of code or whatever it is, where the thought is in its right place, when it comes to judging oneself, when it comes to commenting on others, when it comes to comparing with others, it is in its wrong place. And therefore, that causes disorder. So just as having a furniture here is in order, but if you put it in a different place where it's not meant to be, it's disorder. And the same thing is what we do with thought. We are taking the mechanism of thought and we are employing it in a domain where it's not meant to be employed. That's as simple as what thought is. In fact, someone said very beautifully that the one way to understand this is the purpose of thought is measurement. Right? So, in fact, the word Maya is having the same root as measurement. And therefore, anything that is measurable requires thought. Right? I want to measure to build a perfect house, or to build a perfect car, or to build a computer chip, or whatever it is, from the subtlest to the biggest, anything that's built through matter requires measurement, which is the place of thought. But what we do is we use the same measurement to measure ourselves and measure others. We are comparing with others. We are bringing the propensity to measure into the psychological domain. In the outer domain, measurement is essential. I have to measure to build a good house, to make a good meal. All of that requires measurement. But when I'm measuring inwardly, then I am hurting, then that's where thought is in the wrong place. I am measuring myself. I'm saying, am I very good or am I bad? Am I better than this person? Am I worse than this person? Is he better than me? Why is he getting more credit than me? Why am I not getting the credit? All this measurement. It's the same measurement, but the measurement is in the wrong place. There is no room for measurement in the psychological domain, but we take the measuring faculty, which is necessary for the world, and bring it to the sense of self, and thereby build a false sense of self, and the false sense of self for others too. So that quality of measurement, which creates inwardly disorder, because we have to recognize that the moment I start measuring myself or others, it's disorder. Because then I am evaluating myself, I'm judging myself, I'm comparing myself with others, and that comparison is always going to be limited. I start comparing. Even when I come to a spiritual domain, I'll compare myself with Ramana Maharshi, or I'll compare with Buddha, and they say I'm not like him. So the same comparison that happens between two millionaires is happening even in the realm of so-called enlightenment. So wherever we go, when we build a sense of self, in fact, the sense of self is always built based on comparison. There is no sense of self until we measure. Children are singularly incapable of measuring, right, inwardly. But that faculty of measurement, thinking, comparing, which is essential for the outer world, when it is brought within, it's disorder. And that disorder is what we can call as demoniac. So instead of even trying to go into specifics, we'll go into the specifics of how beautifully it's laid out as to what is demoniac and what is divine. But the important thing to recognize is the presence of this root of demoniac qualities in every one of us. Each human, unless they look within and transcend it, the divine is only a theory. I can have a beautiful altar, I can have chant beautifully, I can invoke various mantras. All of that is happening only at the level of thought. But there is still the measurement going on, right? That I am this and that, and I am in bondage, or even when I come to this, I am not qualified for this, or I am, all this self-judging voice, right? It can be both ways, as we said. It can be taking the garb of being superior, or it can be taking the garb of being inferior. It's the same thing. It doesn't matter. One can say, so as long as I am not looking within and transcending this disorder, the divine is only a theory. And the divine actually adds to the disorder. That is the sad part. Because what happens is, then we say, my divine is better than your divine. So that's how wars come, right? So the same disorder, which is measuring, now wants to measure also the concept of divine. And we say that, therefore, the very measurement, that's why if you really look at it carefully, it's the same root that is causing a conflict between two people as between two nations, or two civilizations, or two religions, whatever it might be. Because as long as I am measuring myself with some yardstick of the past, then it is always going to be limited. And that will always have insecurity. Because any measurement, there is, as the old saying goes, there is always a bigger fish. So any line you draw, one can draw a bigger line. So no matter how big a line you draw, you are never going to be secure, because there is no security in measurement. It is the immeasurable that is true security. That is why the divine is called Aprameya. Aprameya means immeasurable. One of the names of Krishna is Aprameya. Aprameya means the one who cannot be measured. If I measure something, it can always be surpassed. Someone will say, this is the best expression of divine, and then someone else will say, no, my expression, our religion's expression of the divine is the best one. They're trying to surpass, right? So this measurement of what is better, comparison, measurement, is what is affecting interpersonal relations and international relations, as we say. So that is the key thing for us to look into. We have to look within, and we have to recognize the source of disorder within us. And when we recognize the source of disorder within us, that alone will transcend it. We don't have to do anything. To the beauty of this is, we don't have to do anything to transcend it, but just be aware of it. Every time just to take the example of listening, when I'm listening to someone, normally what people do is we listen unconsciously, which is to say, I listen from the standpoint of the listener, which is the ego, right? So I would say that, let's say I come to a particular topic, I may have a set of opinions I have formed on this topic, and based on those opinions, I'm listening. This can happen in any realm, even in a business. That's why even in business meetings, true listening, true conversation happens when your mind is completely open, when you are empty and ready to receive. There is always, I like to use the metaphor of a cup. When the cup is empty, you can pour something in the cup. When the cup has already got something, if you pour something, it's only going to create a mess. So it's important to empty the cup every time after you finish drinking, right? Which is what we don't do with our mind. Our mind is always having something from the past. Again, it's important to distinguish between the functional aspects of memory, which are necessary. I need to know the language to speak. I need to know how to operate the computer, I need to know how to do a whole bunch of things, all of which requires memory, and their memory has its place, and that memory is always available. But what we are talking about emptying is emptying the recording of each moment in terms of building a personal story. When I'm talking to someone, if there is a judgment rising of that person, if it rises, if I'm aware of it, and in the very awareness, I don't record it, then that's not there the next moment. But what I normally do is the judgment is unconsciously recorded as part of memory. So the next time I meet the person, I don't meet the person, I meet the image of the person. I see him through the image I've already stored in my head, that this person is like that. Then that image is the factor that is becoming central to the relationship, not who the person is. So that person may be completely different the next day, but we'll not see that because this happens very easily. Even in the closer the relation, the more easily it happens, because over years between two people, the image is built so strongly, and then we actually don't see the person because we only see the image. And so this image building, which is causing us to not actually listen or not actually see, not actually communicate with a person, is the same reason why communication breaks down at all levels. People talk of having dialogues to solve international conflicts, but they are talking about it from the perspective of being identified as a particular religion or a particular ideology or whatever. As long as you are identified with something, you are never going to listen to the other person. You are only going to listen to the other person from the prism of this identification. So this is the factor that's affecting all. And when we speak of disorder, so that's the very simple way to recognize it, is disorder is putting things in the wrong place. And very simply, very directly, it is putting thought in the wrong place is what we call disorder. Thought has a particular function in our life, but when we are using the same thought, which is essential for doing SAT or doing things which are essential where thought is necessary, but we instead bring it to judging myself, judging others, comparing, then thought is in the wrong place. So when in that light, if you look at it, now he says, first he describes what is order. So if you look at order, how does one live it in order? Order is when there is three things are said first, right? Abhayam, sattva samshuddhir, jnana yoga vyavasthitihi. So abhayam means fearlessness. So fear is the first defining quality of disorder, right? Because there is always duality and in duality, as we said already, insecurity is the essence of measurement. When I'm measuring anything and identifying with the measurement, then I'm insecure. Measurement, if it's objective, I measure the power of this lens, there is no insecurity there. But if I'm measuring myself as, let's say, a very good speaker, then there's going to be someone who's better, and that's going to cause insecurity. At any personal measurement is going to cause fear. So abhayam means freedom from that disorder, which is freedom from fear. And that results in purity. So sattva samshuddhi means purity. Purity is freedom from this voice in the head, this chatter. External purity is important, right? But here he speaks of sattva samshuddhi. That is purity that is abiding in goodness. Right? Goodness not as a relative good and bad, but absolute goodness which comes out of love. And that happens only when there is no comparison, there is no chatter in the head, there is no constant sense of fear and anxiety and worry and speculation and all of it. If I'm listening to something, I'm listening to something. That's it. Then there is purity, right? There is no chatter in the head. When I'm eating, I'm just eating, right? But when I'm not doing that, when I'm just constantly caught in the head, and everything is just done unconsciously or barely consciously, and I don't know what I'm doing, and not fully present, then that is causing all the impurity. Because what happens in that situation is we are recording everything. We are psychologically more and more we are accumulating, and then we come to something like Gita, and then we read Gita, and then we again think I need to now understand Gita and thereby attain realization one day. I am not realized today. So we again build a story of the me who is somehow imperfect and unrealized and in bondage. And all this is what religions feed on again. So the same kind of measurement that is used in so many other things, the religions come and prey on that, because they will say, especially organized religions, they will say, then you need someone to save you because you are so sinful and you are this and you are that. All of this measurement comes. But what is pointed to in the Gita, what is pointed to in the direct teaching is that the very root of this disorder is only present as long as we are not aware. It is not our true nature. We are told to believe that this is our true nature, that I am imperfect, I am sinful, I'm in bondage. And this happens in every religion, even in many aspects of Eastern religions too. This subtle division that I'm in bondage and I need to attain enlightenment one day and I need to work hard on it, and there are many steps to reach there. All of this is again in a subtle way causing this measurement. I'm judging myself against someone, and I'm comparing myself, and I'm evaluating, and I'm putting some program in front of me, and all of this. But what is pointed to is that if you are aware now of this false sense of self through a direct inquiry, you are already not that. So there is no step involved, but it involves tremendous alertness. So when I'm having a voice in the head that says anything, if I ask myself, who is saying this? Who is judging now? Who is criticizing? I will immediately, that one question will make me recognize that the very voice that's criticizing, that's judging, that's evaluating is only an image from the past. It is a memory from the past that is only there when I believe in it. And it's very easy to see that it's not me because it constantly changes too. So the sense of me that is there at home is a very different one from the sense of me at work. And it's very different from the sense of me when I'm watching the news. Then a different me comes and says, oh, this guy is right, that country is wrong, this is right, right? There is a sense of me there. Then when I'm reading a book like this, another sense of me can come and say, I like this book, I don't like that book because I belong to this religion, I don't belong. So every time you notice that the sense of me constantly is changing, that alone tells us that that's not truly myself. It is just an image of memory that is there masquerading as the self and taking over my consciousness, and I believe in it, I fall for it. This is the essence of disorder. That's why it's called as a ghost. Ramana Maharshi calls it a ghost, this ego, because it's like it only thrives in darkness. When I don't pay attention, it takes hold of me. But when I ask, who is this me? I find out that it's just an image, and I believed in it so far to be me. And when that very recognition awakens in me, then the disorder goes. Because I'm not anymore in that moment, right? That is why there are many, like in Ashtavakra Gita, it is said, Janaka got that moment, right? It doesn't, but it doesn't, the important thing to also recognize it is moment to moment. That is to say that thought always wants some kind of permanence in everything, right? So it will say that, oh, I got it now, that means I am enlightened, right? But the next moment your vasana may come and you may actually get caught in another measurement. So there is an alert awareness essential every moment. And that is the only thing that is necessary. So what people do instead in the name of religion, in the name of even spirituality, is they are giving a lot of programs or steps for the false me. You've taken yourself to be a me, and now do this, now do this, now do this. You go through this program, you study this, you study this. And what you are not recognizing is that in the process, you actually believe the story to be me. Your very divinity right now is denied by believing in the false identity as a seeker. So that's why Ramana Maharishi, for instance, always says, any sadhana that begins with the false assumption that I am the ego will only keep perpetuate that illusion. So if you surrender completely, either you surrender or you inquire, both are the same. If you recognize that what is functioning here is the universal energy, the divine is functioning here and now as this body, as this faculty of speech, thinking, talking, doing, everything is happening through this infinite one universal energy. But I have divided it and created a false sense of self, which is measurement. The infinite, which is immeasurable, infinite is another word for immeasurable, but I have made it finite by measurement. When I limit the universal energy to this body, then it becomes finite. It becomes a small entity. Then the universe is so large and I'm so small, then I'm caught in insecurity. I'm afraid of various things. I'm afraid of eventually death and many things before that. So that division is the root of disorder, which is the root of all demoniac qualities. And when we inquire into it, the division is found to be false. So it is the step that one has to take every moment. It is not that there are different steps to take and a goal to reach. The goal is here and now, and it is obscured by the false identification with me, with the sense of self. So the only thing one has to be very vigilant about is every moment be alert and aware and not get identified with this false image of me. That brings forth order. So that's why here it says, this jnana yoga vyavasthitihi. Abiding in jnana is order. To abide in this realization is order, which is divine, which is fearlessness, which is purity. And then all the other qualities flow out of that. So he speaks of dhanam, dhamma, yajna, swadhyaya, arjavam, ahimsa, satyam, akrodham, so on, right? Every quality, the beauty of it is one has to recognize, if you read this list, one of the tendencies of many people is they'll read, I don't know how many, Krishna has maybe given 15 or 20 qualities, let's say. If I think I have to cultivate one by one, then it becomes impossible, right? It's cultivation is again only in the outer realm. I can cultivate a crop, right? I cannot cultivate a quality from the ground of falsity. But when truth is realized, all qualities manifest on their own. That's why every great sage, Ramakrishna, used to say, if you have pure love, then you don't have to worry about any other do's and don'ts, because right things will come, right? So our purpose is to bring forth order, and all of these are symptoms of order. Not that I'm going to today cultivate ahimsa, tomorrow cultivate akrodha. So that is again the same measuring mind, which comes through the back door and says, I have to become non-violent. I have to control my anger. I have to, one by one, if you cultivate, this cultivation process is again in time. And it's again reinforcing this false sense of self. But what is directly pointed to here is recognize order and the divine will manifest in you. So abhayam, fearlessness, and all of this. So dhanam is giving, right? Then we The important thing is, when if you look at every one of them, you will see how they are all rooted in disorder. The opposite is rooted in disorder. And when the opposite goes away, they come. So we hoard things because of insecurity again, right? Everyone has a set of needs, and it varies from person to person, right? I have a set of needs, I have to meet it. For some person, it may be just a hut. Some person, it may be a small house. It doesn't matter. There is no yardstick on what is the right set of needs. But once my needs are reasonably met, whatever I've defined it to be, then I can actually give freely when I'm not caught in this insecurity that this is the sense of self, and seeing everything as outside of me, and therefore I have to somehow hold on to things, and I have to, we see this very great disorder among so many, right? People who are, we see how, for example, multi-billionaires who are still caught in greed, right? Which is the opposite of this, which is disorder, right? Because there is a sense of insecurity that is inherently there, that wants to somehow acquire more and acquire more and acquire more, and there is no end to that, right? But when that is seen through, when we recognize that this is disorder, order is to be free of this, then I know what my needs are, I meet my needs, and then I'm free in giving. So Dhamma means senses are regulated. Similarly, right? The senses are unregulated when there is disorder. Because again, when I'm identified with this limited sense of ego, then I'm always looking to seek the next experience, right? There is always a desire for more experience, because someone said FOMO before we came, right? So there's always this fear of missing out. I want more, I want more. There's desire to grab experience, right? But when I recognize that there is just this divine energy that's operating, then the senses fall in the right place too. There is, we don't overeat, we don't overindulge, we don't do any of that. There is just a natural, orderly activity of the senses. So on, Krishna gives a bunch of qualities which are all important. So ahimsa is non-violence. Satyam is speaking the truth, which is also not hurtful to anyone, right? So Satyam is defined as speaking the truth, which is not hurtful. And all of this is coming forth from the intelligence of each moment, right? If we have a specific plan in our head, then we may not respond with the intelligence of that moment. So when we recognize that there is only this universal principle that's operating, and I'm free of this false sense of measurement, false sense of self, and I'm therefore not dividing myself from what is, then there is an intelligence that's automatically there. And that intelligence will operate in terms of what is to be said, how to respond to a particular moment, what is the function of action in that moment. All of that comes forth naturally. Otherwise, we will have, again, ideals which are brought forth from the image of the past, which will become a dividing yardstick. For example, even the word ahimsa. If someone has a very rigid idea that I have to be always non-violent, then that's an image from the past. You've held on to an ideal from the past, and that can inhibit action that is necessary based on the intelligence of this moment. So that's why, for instance, here, the very battlefield of Gita is a good example of that, right? When Arjuna says, I want to go away from battle, Krishna says, do you realize that if you go away from this battle, the whole kingdom will be ruled by a very evil king, Duryodhana. And millions of people are going to suffer. So what is more violence? You killing the evil king and restoring order, or you adhering to the principle of non-violence and putting millions of people in suffering, right? So that intelligence is not there when someone says, I'll be non-violent always. then you will not take up a weapon even when it's necessary, right? So all of this comes forth only when we are rooted in order and not looking at these qualities as individual qualities to cultivate again. So that's why it's very important to have the right intelligence of looking at everything from the holistic vision. If we look at it fragmented way, then sometimes one quality may be at odds with another, whether it is truth speaking or non-violence. There may be qualities that are even at odds with each other, and there may be what is called as conflict between two. But when there is no predetermined, premeditated image from which we function, and we are functioning holistically. Holistically means, again, recognizing that what is operating here is the one universal energy. And what is creating a separation is the image building or the sense of self that's happening through wrong activity of thought. And again, therefore, to be free of it, it's very important to recognize that freedom from it is only through awareness of it. If I tell myself that I should not measure, that's again another thought. If I tell myself that I should not judge myself, that's again another thought that says, oh, now I'm judging, now I'm going to judge that I'm judging. It's never ending. All it's necessary is to have this very subtle inquiry as to who am I in this moment. When I simply observe that very question, for example, when I'm feeling insulted, or when I'm feeling jealous of someone, when someone is being praised and I'm feeling jealous, every moment is important to be very aware. That's all that's necessary. We don't need to then cultivate any quality. All of them will come on their own. If I'm having jealousy, if I ask who is jealous now, that requires tremendous alertness. But if I don't, if because I'm lazy, I will say that one day I'll be free from jealousy. I will finish all these books and all this and all this. That while I'm giving myself permission to be jealous today. This is what happens in many cases, right? But what is pointed to in the direct inquiry is who is jealous. That's all we need to know. It's not that I'm again judging myself for being jealous. If jealousy rises, that is the truth of this moment. For whatever reason, let's say jealousy rises. Acknowledge the jealousy that has risen and ask who's having this jealousy. We'll immediately see that the jealousy is there because of comparison. And that comparison is there because I've identified with myself as a particular image, and that image is being threatened. And when I recognize that that image is false because it's only a memory that is masquerading as self, and the very awareness of the image removes identification with that image, then what remains is only the presence which is untouched by these images. So we can instantly be free of the jealousy by being aware of the jealousy and who is getting jealous. I don't have to then do anything in time to be free of jealousy because the freedom is available now. But it requires us to be very alert and aware. And when that alert awareness is there, all of this goes away. So Krishna, in fact, that's why in this chapter, he gives actually more description of the demoniac than the divine. Because what we need to understand is the propensity in us to be demoniac, and by being aware of it, we can be free of it. Every time it rises, every thought that rises is only because of this false identification. So if you look at some of these qualities, for example, Dhambo, Dharpa, Abhimana, Krodha, let's say. So Dhamma means hypocrisy, right? To be hypocritical. That is to think one way but to pretend I'm somebody else, right? It's again because I'm insecure of, I have built an image and I'm somehow not secure about this image. I want to project a different image outside. If we ask the question, who is projecting this image? We'll see that this is again simply an activity of thought. Thought in its wrong place again. It's just as simple as that. There is no room for thinking when it comes to building the sense of self. but we constantly use it to create the story of me, right? The story of me is activity of thought in the wrong place, which is disorder, and that is causing hypocrisy. Abhimana means looking for recognition, right? Looking for, or feeling proud, or feeling superior. Krodha is anger, and all of this is rooted in ajnana. That's why he says ignorance is the root of all this. So if we actually recognize that the root of all of this, and then there are many other qualities which go on, where Krishna very nicely talks about how then people go on into various theories. They deny that there is any order in this universe. They think everything is happening accidentally, because when there is no order within, you tend to think there is no order without, and therefore they say it's apratishtam, means there's no basis for it, it's all an accidental happening. And then they say that there is only desire that needs to be satisfied, and there is, this kind of philosophy that is very prevalent among materialists, right? When you think that everything is just matter and it's all an accident, and it's here and it's gone, and I have to just maximize my pleasure, and I have so much wealth today. So all of these things we can actually relate to how people even think these days. They say, I have so much wealth, I have such a good family. Who is there as good as me? I'm doing all these sacrifices, I'm doing all these charities, I'm so great, I'm so much better than others. So this Krishna says this is how people think, right? When you're identified with the disorder, then you start feeling superior to others. If you have wealth, if you have a good family, if you have and then even all the religious activities become a show. That's what he says. You want to do a big sacrifice, and then you want to show people that, hey, I'm doing such a nice yajna, and we want to make sure that it is praised by others, it gets enough uh, recognition, and when we give charity, we want to make sure that it is acknowledged, and we get upset if it's not acknowledged appropriately. So all of these qualities that are there, which are so prevalent in this world, all of these are coming forth from this one root disorder, which is the false sense of identification, which brings forth every single demoniac quality. We can go through the entire list, we will see that all of this, every single one of them, is all rooted to that one thing, but it just manifests in different ways in different people. There are those who have the proclivity to feel very inferior, for instance. That's also the same activity of the ego that says, I am so inferior, I'm so worthless, and I'm never going to get it. And you are again not recognizing the fact that the very expression of the body is divine. The very expression of the mind, the very expression of thought, everything is happening by its own divine intelligence. As long as only as long as I create a sense of self, can I even feel inferior. So the question is, who is there to feel inferior also? Many times this also happens, right? Where we take on the garb of false humility also. We say that I'm so ignorant and I'm so humble, but then if you take on that kind of an identity and you believe in that story, it again becomes a sense of self. And then you are constantly reinforcing that through all your interactions, and then you are looking for someone to come and save you one day, and then someone will come and say, this is the savior for you, and then you can, people will fall for it, right? So the important thing, that's why Buddha beautifully said, be a light to yourself, right? There is no light that can come from outside if we are not ready to awaken the light within. Someone can point the way. He said the word Deshika. It's a nice word. Deshika means one who points the way, right? But you have to actually look, right? Nobody can actually look other than yourself. And that, even in Uddhava Gita, Krishna says the same thing. When Uddhava asks, he says, one has to lift oneself through one's own intelligence. So the very intelligence which we are so good at in outer things, see, this is the other interesting dichotomy or dissonance we see, right? Someone is very intelligent, let's say, with outer things, whether it's coding or whether it's architecture or whether it's anything, right? But the intelligence within is absent, where we don't recognize that I am building a story for myself and I'm believing in the story and I'm inflicting suffering on myself because of the story. Right? All that's why, let's say pain can be part of life, but suffering is completely optional. Right? I mean, one can fall down and have some injury or whatever, it can happen, right? But I suffer only when I compare, right? Even if I have a physical injury, if I accept the injury completely, then there is just the pain. But if I compare it to, oh, I was so good yesterday, I'm comparing me with what I was 2 days ago, and now I'm feeling so bad, and I'm not able to do what I was able. So there's a commentary that builds within the head that adds a layer of suffering, which is absolutely unnecessary. And that suffering is what all of these are. So when we look at every single quality that's listed as Asuri Sampatti, whether it is pride, whether it is anger, whether it is worry, whether it is desire, whether it is bondage due to attachment, whether it is feeling superior due to one's wealth or power or position or intellect or whatever, whether it is desire to control others, overpower others. When we look at all of these qualities, we can see the disorder that is specific to us, that is rising in us every moment. And by that very awareness of the disorder, we can be free of it. And the divine awakens in us in that very moment. And the more we are alert every moment, the more the very ground of disorder goes away. So we don't then have to take on any other practice if we are directly recognizing that the entire sense of suffering that is coming forth is all due to my own making. We can look at it directly, right? So this is what is missing in humanity at large, right? We are all suffering. Everyone is suffering at different levels. Two nations are fighting and suffering. Two people are fighting. One is fighting within oneself. All of this is causing a lot of suffering, right? So the whole purpose of Gita or any such true wisdom text, Krishna says here, the essence of this is to provide liberation. He says the divine qualities provide liberation, vimoksha or moksha, it says somewhere. So he says the divine qualities provide freedom, whereas the demoniac qualities put us in bondage. And this is the simple reality of what we see. So when we look at our own lives, there is a beautiful quote, by the way, which I think it's Carl Jung actually. He said, man doesn't find God because he doesn't look low enough. It's a very interesting quote, right? You really look into that, he was a wise man. He said, when we when we don't look low enough in the sense that we are not aware of our own disorder, right? We look for order outside. We ignore the disorder within us, and we think that, oh, if I go to this place, if I listen to this particular teacher, or if I study all these books, or if I do this, I'll bring forth order, right? And order is divine. It's simply. So when we are actually looking within us and we are freed of the disorder within us, then there is order, then there is the divine. Because the important factor to recognize is that the divine is here and now. What we call as divine is the universal energy that is here and now. That has to be very clear, right? We are not believing in, if we bring a question, bring the sense of belief, then that belief is always partial, right? If I believe in a particular conception of this is God and that is a he or a she and it's this way or that way, there is always going to be, it's all a product of thought, basically, right? So that's why, one has a vision of Krishna, one has a vision of Jesus, let's say, because this product of conditioning, that's what is bringing forth these visions. But the actual divine is that which never comes and goes. Once, in fact, there was a famous, later he became a famous teacher, right? He came to Ramana Maharshi and he said, I see Krishna all the time, right? And Ramana Maharshi said, where is Krishna now? He said, no, he comes sometimes. He said, okay. So he said, this is great. Great that you are getting vision of Krishna. But you are here now, right? So you are saying Krishna comes and goes. What is here now? So that turned him around. He recognized that he was still objectifying Krishna as an image in his head. Whereas the very presence that is seeing is actually divine. So God is not the seen, it is the seer, right? The very seer is divine, not the seen. So when we recognize that, therefore, the very subject within, which is able to function, which is able to do whatever it does, talk or think or act, all of this is happening because of one universal energy, right? There is no belief involved in it at all then. Even the scientists all agree that there is, basically they are after a unified theory, that's why, right? Because they have an intuition that there's got to be one force that unifies all the forces. And even if you look at it even materially, if you look at it, everything is made of atoms and all atoms are made of a certain intelligence which is operating, right? The only thing that's important to recognize is there is intelligence at all levels. The cells have intelligence, the organs have intelligence, the body has intelligence, the atoms have intelligence, right? So that intelligence which is found in every atom of the universe is divine, right? It is what we call Ishvara or God or divine or Bhagavan, whatever term we use. So he is never to be found in time and space. He is here now. That's the most important thing for us to recognize. And what is hiding that presence here and now is demoniac quality. And what reveals it is divine. So when we recognize the demoniac qualities within us, which is obscuring the divine here and now, then we are free of it. And then the divine awakens in us automatically. We are awakened to the divine through the very direct inquiry which leads us to freedom from this being. And that's the essence of this Vibhāga. It says Daivasura Sampati Vibhāga. That is the discernment between what is Daiva and Asura, or what is causing disorder within us and how we come forth to order. We come to order only by transcending disorder. That's the important thing to recognize. We don't go to order through believing in something or through accepting something. All of that can only in a different way further the disorder. It's when the disorder completely ends within us that order awakens. It's like how when the clouds go, only the sun is seen, right? We cannot, the sun is always there, but it's hidden by the clouds. And when the clouds are dissipated, the sun is revealed. And the clouds are these demoniac tendencies within us, that which obscures the divine within. And when we are free of these clouds, the divine is already here shining. So we don't have to go to the divine, we just have to be free of the demoniac. The divine is already here. That's why another nice example Ramana Maharshi always gives is, if a room is cluttered and someone says create some space in the room, we don't actually create space. We just remove the clutter. The space reveals itself, right? So that's what the divine is here, but it's cluttered because of the demoniac. So when we remove the demoniac through awareness, then the divine reveals itself. And that's the essence of this discernment, and thereby freedom from the demoniac through transcending it and recognizing the divine within. And we can say that that is the spirit of Navaratri too. We are in this beautiful Navaratri season, which is awakening of the Divine Mother. There are two symbolisms associated with Navaratri predominantly, right? And both of these are actually reflecting the same. One is the awakening of the Divine Mother, right? The Divine Mother, which is this universal energy we talk about, right? The universal energy, which is what we call as the Divine Mother. That which animates everything is what is, that's why we have this beautiful prayer where it is she who appears as everything, right? All, yeah, namastasye, 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 namo namah. So we have, she is the one who appears as everything. And it is our false imagination that we are a separate self and the disorder that comes forth from it. And if we awaken to this wisdom, then the disorder is removed and the Divine Mother awakens to herself. So that is the symbolism behind the Divine Mother killing the demon to remove the darkness. So this represents the transcending of the demoniac to awaken the divine. The other symbolism, of course, which is, I think, predominantly found in north of India is it's not just symbolism, it is actually said to be this time, is that this 9 days mark the war between Ram and Ravan. And that also marks the same division. Ram represents the divine and Ravana represents the demoniac. And Ravana is the epitome of disorder, right? We can see how he is caught in the ego and he is only therefore interested in all the things he mentioned in this chapter. It's like Valmiki wrote of a perfect villain also. Just as Ram is the perfect hero, Ravana had all the qualities. He had pride, he had anger, he had lust, he had comparison, he had everything. So he was just caught in all of this. And the journey of how Sita being trapped by Ravana and liberated by Rama represents our own inner journey. We are trapped in Ravana, we are Sita trapped in Ravana, and when Ram awakens in us, then we are free of this and we transcend it through this weapon of wisdom, which is what Ram uses to kill Ravana. So that's why it's said that at the end of the 9 days, Ram defeats Ravana and the war ends. So that's also the symbolism of this time, which again points to the same battle within and how to transcend the darkness within through direct insight. It is direct insight. The beauty of this is it's available to therefore all of us here and now. We don't need to learn any method. We don't need to practice anything separate. But the only thing that is being asked is we have to be alert every moment. It's not something to be done 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening and then forgotten the rest of the day, because then that's the rest of the day we are going to be recording. We are going to be measuring. We are going to be doing all the disorderly things we do. and then we sit for meditation in the evening or in the morning, then all the disorder comes up, and then we may have a bit of silence, and then again it awakens. So that's not meditation. That's maybe initially, at least, starts the process, but in reality it is something that is every moment. When we are awake, in every interaction, if you are alert to who is interacting, if there is hurt, who is getting hurt, if there is anger, who is getting angry, if you are just simply awake and alert each moment to what is rising within me as me, and thereby be free of this false sense of me, then that's meditation. That's meditation, living in the divine here and now.
If you apply Maya to something that can't be measured, like psychological states,
right,
or what we call things on the spectrum in America, I don't know what people are talking about when they say it's on the spectrum. You hear that a lot.
Yeah.
It can't be measured, really. Nobody can say what sort of measurement there is in this sort of spectrum. So is it illusion when it's applied then to the immeasurable?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
That's how it goes into that sense of
when the sense of
deluded kind of sense of you think you can measure, but
you can't measure.
You're off. Right now, you're off.
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
Yeah. I have thought it. Most people do think Maya illusion, not the linguistic root.
Yeah.
Of the measuring and
see, it's illusion is one way it's translated, but sometimes people latch on to that translation, and it gives a different connotation. It causes many other sometimes unintended problems in society as well. The pointer there is simply that measurement is always subjective, right?
It can't be done precisely, nicely.
Yeah. So that's why if you go to, as you know well, I don't know if you know well, but if you go to quantum physics, it says that ultimately the observer affects the observed, which means you cannot you can measure only relatively. We can function with it, but even at the material level, in reality, there is no observation free of the observer.
Right.
And therefore, it's illusion because there is no actual objective reality out there independent of the observer. So the measurement and the illusion are going together. The very fact that you are measuring and I am measuring, so when it comes to outer objects, the length of this book, you and I will have a similar yardstick, and therefore we'll have the same measurement. And therefore we can say there is a book here. But that's not the sense of, let's say, if an ant is crawling on this book, for the ant, there is no book there, right? There is something else there. So there is, even what we call as solid matter is only solid based on our perception. So that's why Maya is illusion in its ultimate sense, but sometimes people make the problem with all of this is we make a theory out of it, and we therefore say I have to escape the world because the world is illusion. We can never escape the world because you are the world, right? The you that wants to escape the world is the world because you are creating the world by measuring. So the immeasurable is here and now when the false you goes away. But what we do, and this is a common, another sign of disorder that's found especially in the East, is we want to, this is where the word becomes a problem, is that it becomes a way to escape the world then. But there is no escape from the world because the escape is, if you want to use the word escape, it's here and now, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's not in time and space. I cannot go to Himalayas and escape the world because it's still the world and it's still me measuring the world. But when I recognize that the me that is measuring is already relative and that's not my true essence, then that essence that's immeasurable is here and now.
Even quantum physicists, when they're asked, what do you get out? What is the result of your playing and studying the equations? They say, I don't know. They don't know.
Yeah.
And there's none who admit they totally understand
Yeah.
that it's play.
Right.
Wonderful play, maybe. But and measuring what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So earlier you talked about when we are having a conversation, it's the story, what you tell yourself that gets recorded, and then subsequent conversations you use that as the prism to
Right.
To have the conversation, and you also said that just being aware of that is good enough. But what is the difference in behavior once you're aware of it? Would you change? Would the effect of that is changing the conversation, or is the effect that you don't record it anymore?
It will naturally change, right? See, if I'm listening to you, and let's say a voice rises in me that is judging you based on my previous conversation. Let's say yesterday you spoke to me something which I perceived as insulting. Now I have an image that you insulted me. I'm looking at you, you're talking to me. Now I'm immediately functioning out of this image that he insulted me, right? So that has become the filter through which I'm listening to you. And I'm unconsciously identified with it. But when I am aware of this, when I'm asking who is listening, and I notice that this listener is actually the image of yesterday, which is listening. It's not, I'm not listening to you, the image is listening. And when that very awareness, when I see that this is the false me, then there is just that very awareness is going to remove the identification with that image, right? It is not something that can, one has to, sometimes, for example, a particular image may have a lot of charge, right? A lot of emotional charge. Then it's very hard to be free of it. But if you remain very alertly aware that at least recognize that this is an image, this is not me, right? And you recognize the suffering that this is causing, or the lack of awareness it's causing, the lack of attention it's causing, all of this you are recognizing, then you are not caught in that movement anymore. And then the next time somebody insults you, you may not record it even. You recognize the disorder it's creating. And you are not anymore recording that as the sense of self. But it's something we have to be aware every moment. And naturally, as you said, the conversation will change, right? Because when I'm not identified as me listening to you, then there is only listening, right? There is no listener and listening. There is only listening. And when there is only listening, that's pure listening. And that can be also called as love, right? When I am unconditionally listening to you, or seeing you, or relating to you, without any judgment, any image, any projection, then I accept you as you are now.
If I may add to that,
Yeah.
As a question, so when two people converse, there is so much exchange of information.
Right.
There is knowledge, there
Right.
is data,
Correct.
there is maybe out of that, some I'm unconsciously
Yes.
recording as a story, not as information, not as knowledge, but it is affecting me
Yes.
at an identity level.
Right.
And that is what I should
Correct.
try to be aware of.
Be aware of, yeah, that's
But
all.
the rest of the information is needed for
Yes.
me to talk to you tomorrow.
Good point, yeah.
So I have to bring in the history, but just that don't have to be identified with it.
Right, the history operates on its own then. See, when we are talking, you have given me a bunch of information yesterday. The information is already there in the memory. The language is there, the whatever is necessary to process the information is already there and it's operating. But on top of it, there is the layer of this sense of me that is operating as the listener, which can have its own voice of judgment or its own commentary on the listening itself. I mean, the simplest, easiest way for you to recognize is, am I completely listening? Or is there some bandwidth going to some commentary about the listening? See, the information you're talking about, it will never interfere with the listening, right? If I have a bunch of information that you've given me and I have, that's all part of the listening. But this process of a listener separates itself from the listening. So when we are actually talking to someone, you can be it's very, it requires us to be very aware. But if you're aware, you recognize that, am I just interacting with the person as is, or is there a separate commentary going on that is judging, right? And if you're alertly aware of it, and the very alert awareness can dissolve it. Yeah.
Thank
I had one.
Yeah.
So in the 14th chapter, Krishna talked about the gunatraya.
Yes.
Right. So the sattva, rajas.
Three gunas,
yeah, three gunas. And then this is the
Daivasura.
demonic and the deva. So could you kind of is there some sort of mapping onto those things, because the gunas are supposed to exist because we are part of like Prakriti,
Right.
right? So this recognition,
Right.
of the false thing, is that somehow affected by the guna complex?
Yeah. Yeah. So see, the gunas, we went through the three gunas, right? In the 14th chapter, sattva, rajas, and tamas. These are part of Prakriti, as you say. And Prakriti has its own movement in which the three gunas are cycling through, right? So even at the level of time, for example, that's why it is said early morning sattva predominates, afternoon rajas predominates, evening tamas predominates. And then, of course, it comes through different other ways as well. The thing that is pointed to in that chapter is, when we are identified with the gunas, which is Prakriti, as me, we are caught in the sense of false self. But that identification is stronger depending on the guna. So if you are identified with Tamo guna, it is very dark. It's that such a person is not even going to come and listen to all this, because they are so caught in their identification and they are so convinced that I am this false self that I am. Rajoguna is the kind of person who is also very much caught in that, but he's very active. He is maybe not having the kind of dark depression and violence that the Tamoguna has, but he is causing a lot of disturbance in society, right? By acting. And he is also not as receptive in listening to this. Maybe a little more, but not much. Sattva Guna, the only thing with Sattva Guna is, when Sattva Guna predominates, someone may be still identified with the sense of me, but they are at least starting to become inquisitive, right? They wonder, am I really what I take myself to be? And there is what is called as jignasu, the sense of inquiry is there. It is the inquisitiveness, the very seeking to come to recognize my true nature. All of that, there is still there may be an identity as a seeker, there may be an identity as someone who is studying this or inquiring into this, but at least there is that openness into that. So that is sattva. And when sattva guna is there, then this awakening happens because of the openness to it. And then through that, one can transcend and awaken the divine within.
With the three gunas, those are behavioral, right?
Yes, you could say.
And there's not there's no real ability to measure those things because they're mixed up. We participate in all of those behaviors from time to time.
Sure.
But when I've always thought about this when in ancient texts you have the three gates, say like the three gates of hell in the 16th.
Yes, yeah.
And it is desire, anger, what's the third one?
Greed.
Yeah.
Kama, krodha, lobha.
Lobha.
I always wonder, how do they judge which one you should go, which one this one should be driven into because of this demonic trait, and they have it in classical. There's a gate of horn that you exit, but from
Right.
And I always think it's an interesting metaphor, but why three? Because which one? Who goes in which gate?
Yeah.
It's a problem of metaphors, but it's a picture.
Right.
Yeah. And I think we find that in a lot of stories.
See, three gates actually eventually get resolved to one gate.
Sure, I can imagine.
Right. That's what. And the one gate is the false identification as me.
All in the same pool.
Right. So if you, that's why we cannot transcend the three gates separately. They all funnel back down to the ego, which is the root of all three. What you just said, kama, it's called as in Sanskrit as kama, krodha, lobha, which means you could say lust, anger, and greed. What is the source of all three? The same I thought, right? The thought of identification as me is what is either, it depends, in fact, it is anger it's desire that causes anger, right? In fact, all three are, if you really look at it carefully, they are all related. Because when desire is frustrated, it results in anger. And when desire is accentuated, it results in greed. So that's why Buddha, for example, reduced it all down to desire. He said, root of suffering is desire. So you could reduce kama, krodha, lobha to just kama, right? And then you look at it and you say that that very desire is there. Why? Because again, I'm measuring, as we said. The measurement of me as the self causes desire. Because once I measure and consider myself to be limited, then I can only feel insecure, and therefore I want more and more and more, and that's desire. And so the root of that suffering, which is desire, and the root of desire is the me. And therefore to transcend the me is all there is to the three gates finally. Yeah.
So in the storytelling, three is a very sort of magical number,
Right.
like seven sometimes too. But is it simply for the attractiveness of the picture to the listener of the story that?
No, so many things in nature are in threes.
Yeah.
See, this particular one can be reduced to one.
Beginning,
Really.
middles, and ends.
But for example, you have three states of, that we go through waking, dream, and deep sleep. There are three states.
Mm-hmm.
We have three gunas, as we already said, which are sattva, rajas, and tamas. We have the threefold activity of creation, sustenance, and dissolution of the universe. It's not just the universe, every single thought. If you look at a thought is created, it's sustained for some time, it dissolves. So there is this threefold nature of various things, and perhaps that's why three is used a lot in these metaphors. But this particular one, the three of Kama, Krodha, Lobha, can be dissolved to one. And that one is our disorder, which can be transcended.
And in the fairy stories, they always allow 3 wishes rather than 1 wish, or the 1 wish will do the damage.
Yeah.